can see. I can see. Shit. Well, I didn't adjust my light before I started this, so it's over there, and I'm over here, and now there's no hope. Maybe if I adjust this one? Who the fuck knows? I have accomplished remarkably little today. I got into cosplay, and then I took a nap with the cat. I shot 2 videos, and they weren't even... Neither of them was what I planned to do today. And we're just gonna have to live with that. And I forgot to adjust my light before I started this, so this is incredibly just backlit. The other light... I don't have light bulbs in this room, in like the ceiling fan. So I use a lot of my cosplay lights to just see. So it's over there. It's up like a lamp. So there's that. I wonder if I need to maybe turn this up. I'm gonna blind myself, I just know it. Better, worse, a little bit better. I don't want it to blind me, I just want it to look a little bit better. I've had a super busy week. I don't have my phone charger in here. No, yeah, I do. Okay, good. I just haven't plugged it in. Which would be incredibly useful, you'd think. There we go. A little bit better. I might just stay like this because I installed this wig, so it's going to be on for a while, so... Yeah, I fell asleep earlier. And honestly, it might have helped the makeup. Maybe it helped. All I did was nap and shoot 2 videos. I guess I'm just like exhausted because I left town and then I came back. And then I had to catch up on all the stuff that I missed while I was out of town. So I had to do all the same stuff that I ordinarily have to do on Monday, plus a bunch of stuff that I neglected to do before I left. So, and on top of that, I started a new book that's really distracting me, and then I keep reading it instead of doing things that I should be doing. And I've also been trying to find a book that I now can't find. I thought I found it. The order's confirmed, and then they contacted me and were like, actually, we don't have this. And I was like, cool. Great. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Oh, it was... Well... Okay, I'll tell you. It was Baccano Volume 4, the light novels. I've been... Since someone gifted me the first one, I've been, like, starting to collect them so that I can read them, because I want them, because I love Baccano. So, I can't find the 4th one. The only copy I can find within conventional channels is $300 on eBay. And it's because they're not in print anymore. Thank you, Ray, for finding that out. You can get an ebook copy. I want to specify that. I just don't want that. Thank you. Thank you. I do. I love them. I didn't know you were in here. Hi, Emmy. I do. And I'm trying to collect them all. And the problem with Pokemoning some very long series books is that sometimes you just can't find them all. So I'm a little bummed. I'm gonna get the ebook copy. Don't worry. I just wanted a physical copy to sit on my bookshelf with all the other ones, and now I'm not. I might get lucky and find one. Thank you. Preferably not for $300, but I'll do what I gotta do eventually. I'm gonna circle back around to it once I get all the other ones. I'll circle back around and look for it later. But I do want them, and I did enjoy the first one. And I wanted to continue reading it because it's interesting. Because it's just the same story, but it's the format in which they chose to write some things is very different than how, because especially the train is where it's at. There's a train called the Flying Pussyfoot in the show, and at one point, like, 4 separate families are on this train that are all, like, interconnected mob families, and they have different sets of goals. One of which is like, okay, we're gonna rob the freight car, and it's like, okay, we're gonna take this this woman has like a powerful husband, so we're gonna kidnap her and her child and hold them hostage to get him to take political action and like pardon someone we have in prison. And then another faction is like, I just want to kill a bunch of people, and like, and I was like, how are they going to do that? The answer is there are no chapters. The whole book is just one long stream of consciousness hopping from one individual to the next. And I was like, interesting that they chose to do it this way. Also, don't break for any chapters at all. So that it's a fun read, and I want all of them. And I'm gonna get it. But I got the train one, so 12. I'm on chapter 12 of Assistant to the Villain was the other one that I got, that I told Ray about because I knew Ray had read it. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, and not doing any of the things that I'm responsible for doing like an adult. It'll get done. It just was not that day. Today was not that day. Speaking of books, we got a book to read. And just for reference, I know I keep telling you what chapter we're on, and it feels like a lie because we're on chapter 7. But it doesn't feel like chapter 7. This is where chapter 7 is at in the book. We're almost 3/4 of the way through this thing. So if you don't know, I read everybody a bedtime story. We're working our way through Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Book 3, Library of Souls, Chapter 7. If you found it, good. But also check to make sure that it isn't an ebook copy, because that's been in the fine print of a lot of websites. Also, Ray sent me a website that said they had a hardcover in it, and then I went, looked that up, purchased it, and then they got back to me saying that they canceled my order because they, in fact, do not have it. So I would double check. I went through 2 pages of Google listings. So if you found it, great. If it's $300, if it's the $300 copy on eBay, That does not help. So, I'll check it out and let you know. But we're on chapter 7. If you're following along, last week we got a hollow. We broke a hollow out of an illegal fighting ring, and brought it back to Bentham's, where they healed it up and plugged it in to the Panlupticon in the house, which turned on and is powered up, but not without some level of sacrifice on Jacob's part. So, created the Hologas Conservation and Protection Agency, because apparently hollows are pets. And after they got the Panlupticon booted up, that means that all the doorways are interconnected again, which means if we go through one of the doors, we can follow along to one of Call's doors inside of the fortress, which means that we can go behind enemy lines. So the plan is that Jacob and Emma are going to go through the door in the Panlupticon. Bentham's not doing shit, and Sharon's going to go outside the walls and create a large distraction that will muddy the waters a bit and give them an edge up to look for their friends and their inbred. So that's where we're at, and that's what you missed on Glee. Who is ready to get at it? Who's ready to listen to what happens after this? Sweet. Now I gotta tell you, this chapter, 40 pages. But there's a lot of pictures, and I didn't count the amount of pictures. 2. Gets a little Saw. Gets a little, not as brutal as Saw. You'll see what I mean. There's a game being played here. And it has the similar layout. I haven't caught up, so I'm going to be a little lost. I think I need to catch up to YouTube. No, we have one, Dad. We have one. We followed Bentham's assistant into the room, past the usual furnishings, through the missing fourth wall, and out into a thick grove of evergreens. It was midday, late fall or early spring. The air chill and tinged with wood smoke. Our feet crunched along a well-worn path. The only other sounds a songbird's whistle and the low but rising roar of falling water. Bentham's assistant said little, and that was fine by us. Emma and I were filled with a high, buzzing tension and had no interest in idle conversation. We passed through the trees and out onto a track that curved around a mountainside, a desaturated landscape of gray rocks and patches of snow. Distant pines like rows of bristling brushes. We jogged at a moderate pace, careful not to exhaust ourselves too soon. After a few minutes, we rounded a bend and found ourselves standing before a thundering waterfall. Here was one of the signs Bentham had promised. "This way," it read, plain as day. "Where are we?" Emma asked. "Argentina," the assistant replied. Obeying the sign, we followed a path that became gradually overgrown with trees and thickets. We pushed aside the brambles and trudged on, the waterfall quieting behind us. The path ended at a small stream. We followed the stream a few hundred yards until it, too, ended, the water flowing into a low opening in a hillside, the entrance to which was hidden by ferns and moss. The assistant knelt on the stream bank and pulled back a curtain of weeds, then froze. Here's a picture of a waterfall. "What is it?" I whispered. He pulled a pistol from his belt and fired 3 shots into the opening. A chilling cry came back, and then a creature rolled out into the stream dead. "What is it?" I asked again, staring at the creature. It was all fur and claws. "Dunno," said the assistant, "but it was waiting for you." It was nothing I could identify. It had a lumpy body, fanged teeth, and giant bulbous eyes, and even they seemed to be covered with fur. I wondered if Call put it there, if maybe he'd anticipated his brother's plan and booby-trapped all the shortcuts into his Panlupticon. The stream carried the body away. "Bentham said he didn't have any guns," Emma said. "He doesn't," the assistant said. "This one's mine." Emma looked at him expectantly. "Well, could we borrow it?" "No." He put it away, pointed to the cave. "Go through there, retrace your steps, backward to the place we came from. Then you'll be with the whites." "Where will you be?" He sat down in the snow. "Here." Here's another picture. I looked at Emma, and she looked back, both of us trying to hide how vulnerable we felt, trying to grow a sheath of steel around our hearts for what we might see, might do, might be done to us. I descended into the stream and helped Emma in. The water was numbingly cold. Bending to peer into the cave, I saw daylight glinting dimly at the other end. Another changeover. Darkness into light. Pseudo-birth. There appeared to be no more toothy creatures waiting inside, so I lowered myself into the water. The stream rushed up over my legs and waist in a freezing swirl that took away my breath. I heard Emma gasp behind me as she did the same, and then I grabbed the lip of the cave and slid inside. Being immersed in cold, rushing water hurts like being stabbed with needles all over your body. All pain is motivating, and this type especially so. I scrabbled and pushed myself through the stone tunnel with a quickness, over slick, sharp rocks and low underhangs, half choking us as water flowed over my face. Then I was out, and turned to help Emma. We jumped out of the freezing stream and looked around. The place was identical to the other side of the cave, except there was no assistant, no bullet casings in the snow, no footprints. As if we'd stepped through a mirror and into the world it reflected, minus a few details. "You're blue," Emma said, and she pulled me up onto the bank and held me. Her warmth coursed through me, bringing feeling back to numbed limbs. We walked, retracing every step of the route we'd taken. We found our way back through the brambles, up the hill, past the waterfall, all the scenery just the same except for the "This Way" sign Bentham had set out for us. It was not here. This loop did not belong to him. We arrived again at the small forest, darted from tree to tree, using each one as cover, until we reached the place where the path ended and became a floor and then a room, framed and hidden by a pair of crossed firs. But this room was different from Bentham's. It was Spartan, no furnishings, no poppy-laced wallpaper, and the floor and walls were smooth concrete. We stepped inside and searched the darkness for a door, running our hands along the walls until I happened to hook a small recessed handle. We pressed our ears to the door, listening for voices or footsteps. I heard only vague echoes. Slowly, carefully, I slid the door open a crack, inched my head through the gap to peek out. Here was a wide curving hall of stone, hospital clean and blindingly bright, its smooth walls toothed with tall, black, tomb-like doors, dozens of them curving away sharply. This was it, the White's Tower. We had made it inside the lion's den. And here's your picture. I heard footsteps approaching, pulled my head back inside the door. There was no time to close it. Through the crack I glimpsed a flash of white as a man walked by. He was moving quickly, dressed in a lab coat, head down to read a paper in his hand. He didn't see me. I waited for his footsteps to recede and then squeezed into the hall. Emma followed, pulling the door shut behind us. Left or right? The floor ran uphill to the left, downhill to the right. According to Bentham, we were in Call's Tower, but as prisoners were not. We needed to get out. Down, then. Down and right. We turned right, hugging the inner wall as the hallway spiraled downward. The rubber soles of my shoes squeaked. I hadn't noticed the noise up until now, and in the amplified quiet of the hard-walled hallway, each step was cringe-inducing. We went on for a short while, and then Emma tensed and threw her arm across my chest to stop me. We listened. With our footsteps silenced, we could hear others. They were ahead of us, and close. We rushed to the closest door. It slid open easily. We dove inside, closed it, threw our backs against it. The room we'd entered was round, walls and ceiling both. We were inside a huge drainage pipe, 30 feet wide and still under construction. And we weren't alone. Where the pipe ended and broke into rainy daylight, a dozen men sat on a pipe-shaped scaffold, staring at us, dumbfounded. We'd interrupted them during their lunch break. "Hey, how'd you get in here?" one shouted. "They're kids," said another. "Hey, this isn't a playground." They were American, and they didn't seem to know what to make of us. We didn't dare respond for fear that the whites in the hall might hear us, and I worried that the workers shouting would attract their attention too. "Have you got that finger?" I whispered to Emma. "Now seems like a good time to test it out." So we gave them the finger. By which I mean we put on the dust masks, wet from the stream but still serviceable. Emma crushed a tiny bit of Mother Dust's pinky, and we walked down the pipe toward the men and attempted to launch the powder at them. First, Emma tried blowing it out of her cupped hand, but it just swirled into a cloud around our heads, which made my face tingle and go a bit numb. Next, I tried throwing it, which didn't work at all. The dust, it seemed, wasn't much good as an offensive weapon. By now, the pipe builders were growing impatient, and one had jumped down from the scaffold to remove us by force. Emma tucked the finger away and made a flame with her hand. There was a poof as Emma's flame ignited the dust hanging in the air, turning it instantly to smoke. "Whoa!" the man said. He began coughing and soon slumped to the floor, fast asleep. When a few of his friends ran to help him, they too fell victim to the cloud of anesthetic smoke and fell to the ground beside him. Now the remaining workmen were afraid, hungry, and shouting at us. We ran back to the door before the situation could devolve further. I checked that the coast was clear, and we slipped into the hall. When I closed the door behind us, the sound of the men's voices was muted completely, as if it hadn't just shut them inside, but had somehow turned them off. There's a picture of all the construction workers. We ran a short way, then stopped and listened for footsteps. Then ran, then stopped and listened, spiraling down the tower in stuttering bursts of action and silence. Twice more we heard people coming and ran to hide behind doors. Inside one was a steaming jungle echoing with the screams of monkeys, and another opened into an adobe room, beyond which lay hard-packed ground and looming mountains. The floor leveled and the hallways straightened. Around the last bend was a pair of double doors with daylight gleaming beneath them. "Shouldn't there be more guards around?" I said nervously. Emma shrugged and nodded toward the doors, which appeared to be the only way out of the tower. I was about to push them open when I heard voices on the other side. A man telling a joke. I could hear only the burble of his voice, not the words, but it was definitely a joke, because when he finished there was an eruption of laughter. "Your guards," Emma said, like a waiter presenting a fancy meal. We could either wait and hope they went away, or open the door and deal with them. The latter option was braver and faster, so I summoned new Jacob and told him we were going to throw open the door and fight, and to please not discuss the matter with old Jacob, who inevitably would whine and resist. But by the time I'd gotten it all settled, Emma was already doing it. Silently and quickly she pulled open one of the swinging doors. Arrayed before us were the backs of 5 whites in mismatched uniforms, all wearing modern police-issue type pistols at their waist. They were standing casually, facing away from us. None had seen the door open. Beyond them was a courtyard, surrounded by low barracks-like buildings, and rising in the farther distance was the fortress wall. I jabbed my finger toward the finger hidden in Emma's pocket. "Sleep," I mouthed, by which I meant that rendering these whites unconscious and then dragging them inside the tower seemed the most expedient course of action. She understood, pulled the door halfway closed, and began to dig out the finger. I reached for the dust masks, which were stuffed into my waistband. And then a flaming mass of something flew over the fortress wall in the distance, sailed towards us through the air in a graceful arc, and fell, splat, in the middle of the courtyard, spraying dribbly blobs of fire everywhere and sending the guards into a state of excitement. 2 ventured to see what had landed, and as they bent over to examine the flaming muck, another hunk came sailing over the wall and hit one of them. He was sent sprawling, his body aflame. From the smell of it, which was pungent and traveled fast, it was a mixture of gasoline and excrement. The remaining guards ran to extinguish him. A loud alarm began to sound. Within seconds, whites were flying out of the buildings around the courtyard and rushing toward the wall. Sharon's assault had begun, bless him, and not a moment too soon. With any luck, it would give us enough cover to search unimpeded, at least for a few minutes. I couldn't imagine it would take longer than that for the whites to repel a few Ambro addicts armed with catapults. We scanned the courtyard. It was surrounded on 3 sides by low-slung buildings, each more or less identical to the next. There were no flashing arrows or neon signs advertising the presence of Imbrans. We would have to search as fast as we could and hope we got lucky. 3 of the whites had run off to the wall, leaving 2 behind to extinguish the one covered in flaming excrement. They were rolling him in the dirt, their backs to us. We chose a building at random, the one on the left, and ran to its door. Inside was a large room, suffocatingly packed with what looked and smelled like second-hand clothes. We ran down an aisle lined with racks of clothes of every description, from all different time periods and cultures, all labeled and organized. A wardrobe, perhaps, for every loop the whites had infiltrated. I wondered if the cardigan Dr. Golan always wore to our meetings had hung in this room. But our friends weren't here, and the Imbrans weren't either. So we tore through the aisles looking for a way into the next building that didn't lead back through the exposed courtyard. There were none. We'd have to risk another dash outside. We went to the door and watched through the crack, waiting as a straggler ran through the courtyard, pulling on his guard's uniform as he went. Once the coast was clear, we ran out into the open. Catapulted objects landed all around us. Having run out of excrement, Sharon's improvised army had begun to launch other things. Bricks, garbage, small dead animals. I heard one such projectile utter a string of profanities as it smacked into the ground and recognized the shriveled form of a bridgehead spinning across the ground. If my heart hadn't been thrumming so tremendously, I might have laughed out loud. We made it across the courtyard to the building opposite. Its door seemed promising, heavy and metal. It would surely have been guarded had the guard not abandoned his post to go to the wall. Surely there was something important inside. We opened it and slipped into a small white-tiled laboratory that smelled strongly of chemicals. My eyes were drawn to a cabinet filled with terrifying surgical tools, all steely and shining. There was a deep hum coming through the walls, the dissonant heartbeat of machines, and something else, too. "Do you hear that?" Emma said, tense, listening. I did. It was sustained and shattering, but distinctly human. Someone was laughing. We traded a baffled look. Emma gave Mother Dust's finger to me and lit a flame in her hand, and we each put on our masks, ready for anything, we thought, though, in retrospect, we were not at all prepared for the house of horrors that lay waiting for us. We moved through rooms I struggle to describe now because I've tried to erase them from my memory. Each was more nightmarish than the last. The first was a small operating theater, the table armed with straps and restraints. Porcelain tubs along the walls stood ready to collect drained fluids. Next was a research area where tiny skulls and other bones were connected to electrical equipment and gauges. The walls were papered in Polaroids documenting experiments conducted on animals. By then we were shuddering, shielding our eyes. The worst was yet to come. In the next room was an actual, ongoing experiment. We surprised 2 nurses and a doctor as they were performing some ghastly procedure on a child. They had a young boy stretched between two tables. Newspapers spread below him to catch drips. A nurse held his feet while a doctor gripped his head and peered coldly into his eyes. They turned and saw us with our dust masks and flaming hands and shouted for help, but no one was there to hear them. The doctor dashed for a table full of cutting tools, but Emma beat him to it, and after a brief scramble, he gave up and raised his hands. We pinned the adults in the corner and demanded they tell us where the prisoners were kept. They refused to say a word, so I blew dust in their faces until they slumped into a pile on the floor. The child was dazed but unhurt. He couldn't seem to generate more than a whimper in response to our hurried questions. "Are you okay? Are there more like you? Where?" So we thought it best to hide him for now. Wrapping him in a sheet for warmth, we stowed him in a small closet with promises to return that I hoped we could keep. And here's some pictures. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Third one. Fourth one. The next room was wide and open like a hospital ward. 20 or more beds were chained to the walls, and peculiars, adults and children alike, were strapped into the beds. None appeared conscious. Needles and tubes snaked from the soles of their feet to bags that were filling slowly with black liquid. "They're being drained," Emma said, her voice shaking. "Their souls drawn out." I didn't want to look at their faces, but we had to. "Who's here? Who's here? Who are you?" I muttered as we raced from bed to bed. I hoped, shamefully, that none of these poor wretches were our friends. There were several we recognized. The telekinetic girl, Melina. The Pale brothers, Joel and Peter, separated so there was no chance of another destructive blast. Their faces were twisted, their muscles tense and fists clenched even in sleep, as if both were in the grip of terrible dreams. "My God," Emma said. "They're trying to fight it." "Then let's help them," I said, and stepping to the end of Melina's bed, I drew the needle carefully from her foot. A tiny drop of black liquid leaked from the wound. After a moment, her face relaxed. "Hello," said a voice from elsewhere in the room. We spun around. In the corner sat a man in leg shackles. He was curled in a ball and rocking, and he laughed without smiling, his eyes like shards of black ice. It was his cold laugh we'd heard echoing through the rooms. Here's a picture. Where are the others being held? Emma said, dropping to her knees in front of him. Oh, why, they're all right here, the man said. No, the others, I said. There have to be more. He laughed again, his breath coming out in a little puff of frost, which was strange, because it wasn't cold in the room. You're standing on top of them, the man said. Make sense, I shouted, losing my temper. We don't have time for this. Please, Emma begged. We're peculiars. We're here to help you. But first we have to find our Imrans. Which building are they in? He repeated himself very slowly. You're standing on top of them. His words blew a steady stream of icy air in our faces. Just as I was about to grab him and shake him, the man raised an arm and pointed to something behind us. I turned around and noticed, camouflaged in the tile floor, a handle in the square outline of a hatch door. On top of them, literally. We ran to the handle, turned it, and pulled up a door in the floor. A set of metal stairs spiraled into darkness. How do we know you're telling the truth? Emma asked. You don't, the man said, which was true enough. Let's give it a try, I said. There was, after all, nowhere else to go but back the way we'd come. Emma looked torn, her gaze traveling from the stairs below to the beds around us. I knew what she was thinking, but she didn't even ask. There was no time to go bed to bed unhooking everyone. We'd have to come back for them. I just hoped that when we did, there would be something to come back to. Emma lowered herself onto the metal stairs and descended into the dark hole in the floor. Before I followed, I locked eyes with the madman and raised a finger to my lips. He grinned and copied my gesture. I hoped he meant it. Guards would be there soon, and if he kept his mouth shut, maybe they wouldn't follow us into the hatch. I started down the stairs and pulled the door shut after me. Emma and I huddled near the top of a narrow cylinder of spiraling stairs and peered down. It took a moment for our eyes to transition from the bright room above to this mostly lightless dungeon walled in rough rock. She gripped my arm and whispered in my ear. Cells! She pointed. Dimly it came into view, the bars of a prison cell. We crept down the stairs. The space began to reveal itself. We were at the end of a long, subterranean hallway lined with cells, and though we couldn't see yet who was in them, I had a soaring moment of hope. This was it. This was the place we'd hoped to find. Then came a sudden slap of boots in the hall. Adrenaline surged through me. A guard was patrolling, rifle over his shoulder, pistol at his hip. He hadn't seen us yet, but he would any moment now. We were too far from the hatch to escape the way we'd come, and too far from the ground to easily leap down and fight him. So we hunkered and shrank back, hoping the stairs' spindly railing would be enough to hide us. But it couldn't be. We were nearly at his eye level. He was 20 steps away, then 15. We had to do something. So I did. I stood up and walked down the stairs. He noticed me right away, of course, but before he could get a good look, I started talking. Loud and bossy, I said, "Didn't you hear the alarm? Why aren't you outside defending the walls? And by the time he realized that I was not someone he took orders from, I had reached the floor. And by the time he'd started to grab for his gun, I had already closed half the distance between us, barreling toward him like a quarterback. I hit him with my shoulder just as he pulled the trigger. The gun roared, the shot ricocheting behind me. We sprawled to the ground. I made the mistake of trying to stop him from squeezing off another shot while trying to give him the finger. I had it now, which was stuffed deep in my right pocket. I didn't have enough limbs to do both, and he threw me off him and stood up. I'm sure that would have been the end of me if he hadn't seen Emma running towards him, hands aflame, and turned to shoot her instead. He squeezed off around, but it was wild, too high, and that gave me just the opportunity I needed to scramble to my feet and charge him again. I tackled him and we fell across the hallway, his back slamming into the bars of one of the cells. He hit me hard in the face with his elbow, and I spun and fell, and then he was raising the gun to shoot me, and neither Emma nor I were close enough to stop him. Suddenly, a pair of meaty hands reached out of the darkness through the bars and grabbed the guard by his hair. His head snapped back hard and rung the bars like a bell. The guard went limp and slid to the ground, and then Bronwyn came forward inside the cell, pressed her face to the bars, and smiled. "Mr. Jacob, Miss Emma." I had never been so glad to see anyone. Her large, kind eyes, her strong chin, her lank brown hair. It was Bronwyn. We stuck our arms through the bars and hugged her as best we could, so excited and relieved that we started babbling. Bronwyn, Emma gasped. "Is it really you?" "Is that you, miss?" said Bronwyn. "We've been praying and hoping, and I was so worried the whites had got you." Bronwyn was squeezing us against the bars so hard I thought I might pop. The bars were thick as bricks and made of something stronger than iron, which I realized was the only reason Bronwyn hadn't broken out of her cell. "Can't breathe," Emma groaned, and Bronwyn apologized and let us go. Now that I could get a proper look at her, I noticed a bruise on Bronwyn's cheek and a dark stain that might have been blood spotting one side of her blouse. "What did they do to you?" I said. "Nothing serious," she replied, "though there's been threats." "And the others?" Emma said, panicked again. "Where are the others?" "Here," came a voice down the hallway. "Over here," came another, and then we turned and saw, pressed against the bars of the cells lining the hall, the faces of our friends. There they were, Horace and Enoch, Hugh and Claire, Olive, gasping through the bars at us from the top of her cell, her back against the ceiling, all there, all of them breathing and alive. Except poor Fiona, lost when she fell from the cliff at Miss Wren's menagerie. But mourning her was a luxury we didn't have right then. "Oh, thank the birds, the miraculous bloody birds!" Emma cried, running to take Olive's hands. "You can't imagine how worried we've been." "Not half as worried as we've been," Hugh said from down the hall. "I told them you'd come for us," Olive said near tears. "I told them, but Enoch kept saying I was a loony for thinking so." "Never mind that, they're here now," said Enoch. "What took you so long?" "How in Perplexus' name did you find us?" said Millard. He was the only one the whites had bothered to dress in prisoner's garb, a striped jumpsuit that made him easy to see. "We'll tell you the whole story," said Emma. "But first, we need to find the Embrons and get you all out of here." "They're down the hall," said Hugh. "Through the big door." At the end of the hall was a huge metal door. It looked heavy enough to secure a bank vault or hold back a hologast. "You'll need the key," said Bronwyn, and she pointed out a ring on the unconscious guard's belt. "It's the big gold one. I've been watching him." I scrambled to the guard and tore the keys from his belt. Then I stood frozen with them in my hand, my eyes darting between the cell doors and Emma. "Hurry up and let us out," Enoch said. "With which key?" I said. The ring held dozens, all identical, save the big gold one. Emma's face fell. "Oh no!" More guards would be coming soon, and unlocking every cell would cost precious minutes. So we ran to the end of the hall, unlocked the door, and gave the keys to Hugh, whose cell was closest. "Free yourselves, and then the others," I said. "Then stay here until we come back to get you," Emma added. "No chance," Hugh said. "We're coming after you." There was no time to argue, and I was secretly relieved to hear it. After all this time, struggling on our own, I was looking forward to having some backup. Emma and I heaved open the big bunker-like door and took a last look at our friends and slipped away. This is when it starts getting kind of horror show, Saw-esque. You'll see what I mean. I can't describe it better than that. On the other side of the door was a long rectangular room cluttered with utilitarian furniture and lit from above by greenish fluorescent bulbs. It was doing its best impression of an office, but I wasn't fooled. The wall was spongy with foam soundproofing. The door was thick enough to withstand a nuclear blast. This was no office. We could hear someone moving around at the far end of the room, but our view was blocked by a bulky filing cabinet. I touched Emma's arm and nodded my head. "Let's go." And we began to advance quietly, hoping to sneak up on whoever was in here with us. I caught a glimpse of a white coat and a man's balding head. Definitely not an Imbran. Had they not heard the door opening? No, they hadn't. And then I realized why. They were listening to music. A woman's voice sang a soft, slinky rock song, an old one I'd heard before but couldn't name. So strange, so dislocating to hear it here, now. We slid forward, the song just loud enough to mask our footsteps, passing desks crowded with papers and maps. A rack mounted to a wall held hundreds of glass beakers, silver-flecked black liquid spinning inside. Lingering, I saw that each was labeled, the names of the victims whose souls they contained printed in small type. Peeking around the filing cabinet, we saw a lab-coated man seated at a desk, shuffling papers, his back to us. All around him was a horror show of random anatomy. A skinned arm with musculature exposed. A spine hung like a trophy on the wall. You don't say. That makes me feel worse somehow. A few bloodless organs scattered like lost puzzle pieces on the desk. It's making me feel worse. The man was writing something, nodding his head, humming along with the song. Something about love, something about miracles. That loop leads directly to my house. No. Here's a picture. We stepped into the open and moved towards him across the floor. I remembered where I'd last heard the song. At the dentist, while a metal pick stabbed at the soft pink flesh of my gums. You make loving fun. Now we were only a few yards away. Amma held out a hand, ready to light it, but just before we got within reach of the man, he spoke to us. Hello there. I've been expecting you. It was a slimy, smooth voice I could never forget. Call. Emma summoned flames that shot from her palms with the sound of a whip crack. Tell us where the Embrins are and I might spare your life. Startled, the man spun around in his chair. What we saw startled us, too. Below his wide eyes, his face was a ruin of melted flesh. This man was not Gaul. He wasn't even a white, and it couldn't have been him who'd spoken. The man's lips were fused together. In his two hands, he held a mechanical pencil and a small remote control. Pinned to his coat was a name tag. Warren. Gee, you wouldn't hurt old Warren, would you? Call's voice again, coming from the same place as the music, a speaker in the wall. Though it wouldn't matter much if you did. He's only my intern. Warren sank low into his swivel chair, looking fearfully at the flame in Emma's hand. Who are you? Where are you? Emma shouted, looking around. Never mind that, Call said through the speaker. What matters is that you've come to see me. I'm delighted. It's so much easier than hunting you down. We've got a whole army of peculiars on their way, Emma bluffed. The crowd at your gates is just the tip of the spear. Tell us where the Embrins are, and maybe we can settle this peacefully. Army, Call said, laughing. There aren't enough fight-ready peculiars left in London to form a fire brigade, much less an army. As for your pathetic Embrins, save your empty threats. I'll gladly show you where they are. Warren, would you do the honors? Warren pushed a button on the remote in his hand, and with a loud whoosh, a panel slid aside in the wall to one side of us. Behind it was a second wall, made of thick glass, which looked like an expansive room engulfed in shadow. We pressed against the glass, cupping our hands around our faces to see. Gradually, there came into view a space like a neglected basement, jumbled with furnishings and heavy drapes and human forms frozen in strange postures, many of which appeared, like the spare parts on Warren's desk, to have been stripped of their skin. Oh God, what's he done to them? My eyes darted around the dark, my heart racing. That's Miss Glassbill, Emma cried, and then I saw her. She sat in a chair off to one side, mannish and flat-faced, perfectly symmetrical braids falling down either side of her head. We pounded on the glass and called to her, but she merely stared, in a daze, unresponsive to our shouts. There's Miss Glassbill. What have you done to her? I shouted. Why won't she answer? She's had a bit of her soul removed, Cole said. Tends to numb the brain. You bastard! Emma shouted and punched the glass. Warren backed his rolling chair into the corner. You black-hearted, despicable, cowardly... Oh, calm down, Cole said. I only took a little of her soul. And the rest of your nursemaids are in top health, if not spirits. A harsh overhead light flickered on in the jumbled room, and it became suddenly clear that most of the figures were just dummies. No, obviously not real mannequins or anatomical models of some kind, posed like statues with their tendons and muscles all flexed and popping. But in among them, gagged, bound to chairs and wooden posts, flinching and squeezing their eyes shut against the sudden light, were real, living people. Women. 8, 10. I hadn't had time to count them all. Most of them older, disheveled, but distinguished looking. Our Imbrans. Jacob, it's them, Emma cried. Can you see Miss... The light flicked off before we could find Miss Peregrine, and now my eyes, ruined for the dark, could see nothing through the glass. She's there too, Cole said with a bored sigh. Your pious bird, your wet nurse. Your sister, I said, hoping that might inject some humanity into him. I would hate to kill her, he said, and I suppose I won't, provided you give me what I want. And what's that? I said, pulling away from the glass. Nothing much, he said casually. Just a little bit of your soul. What? Emma barked. I laughed out loud. No, hear me out, Cole said. I didn't even want the entire thing. Merely an eyedropper's worth. Less even than I took from Miss Glassbill. Yes, it'll make you a bit dopey for a while, but in a few days you'll have fully recovered your faculties. You want my soul because you think it'll help you use the library, I said, and take all that power. I see you've been talking to my brother, Cole replied. You might as well know. I've nearly accomplished it now. After a lifetime of searching, I've finally found Abaton and the Imbrans. This perfect combination of Imbrans have unlocked the door for me. Alas, it was only then that I learned I needed still another component. A peculiar, with a very specific talent. Not often seen in the world these days. I had nearly despaired of ever finding such a person when I realized that a certain peculiar's grandson might fit the bill, and that these Imbrans, otherwise useless to me now, would act as a lure. And so they have. I do believe it's fate, my boy. You and I will go down in peculiar history together. We're not going anywhere together, I said. If you get that kind of power, you'll make the world a living hell. You misunderstand me, he continued. That's not surprising. Most people do. Yes, I've had to make the world a hell for those who stood in my way. But now that I've nearly achieved my goal, I'm prepared to be generous, magnanimous, forgiving. The music, still warbling below Call's voice, had faded into a calm, instrumental number, so at odds with the panic and terror I was feeling that it gave me a chill. "We'll finally live in peace and harmony," he said, his voice smooth and reassuring. "With me as your king, your god. This is Peculiardom's natural hierarchy. We were never meant to live like this, decentralized and powerless, ruled by women. There will be no more hiding when I'm in charge. No more pathetic cowering beneath the skirts of Imbrins. Our rightful place as Peculiars is at the head of the human table. We'll rule the earth and all its people. We'll finally inherit what's ours."
"If you think we're going to play any role in that," said Emma, "you're out of your gourd."
"I expected as much from you, girl," said Call. "You're so typical of an Imbrin-raised peculiar. No ambition, no sense at all, but one of entitlement. Quiet yourself. I am speaking to the male." Emma's face went as red as the flame in her hand. "Get on with it," I said tersely, thinking of the guards that were probably on their way and our friends still fumbling with keys in the hallway. "Here's my offer," said Call. "Allow my specialists to perform their procedure on you, and when I've got what I want, I'll let you and your friends go free. And your Imbrins, too. They'll pose me no threat then, anyhow." "And if I refuse?" "If you won't let me remove your soul the easy and painless way, then my hollows will be more than happy to do it. They aren't known for their bedside manner, though. And once they're through with you, I'm afraid I'll be powerless to stop them from moving on to your Imbrins. So you see, I'll get what I want either way."
"That won't work,"
Emma said. "Are you referring to the boy's little trick? I've heard he's been able to control one hollow. But how about 2 at once? Or 3? Or 5?
"As many as I want," I said, trying to sound confident. Unflappable.
"That I would very much like to see," said Call. "Shall I take that as your answer, then?"
"Take it however you like," I said. "I'm not helping you."
"Oh, goody," Call said. "This will be loads more fun." We could hear Call laughing over the PA, and then I startled at the sound of a loud buzzer.
"What have you done now?"
Emma said. I felt a sharp pulse in my gut, and without Call having to explain anything, I could picture exactly what was happening. In a tunnel below the Imbrin's room, a hollow had been released from deep within the bowels of the complex. It was coming closer, climbing toward a grate in the floor that was scraping open. It would be among the Imbrins soon. "He's sending up a hollow," I said. "It's coming into the room." "We'll start with just one Hologast," said Call. "If you can manage him, I'll introduce you to his friends." I banged on the glass. "Let us in." "With pleasure," said Call. "Warren." Warren pushed another button on the remote. A door-sized section of the glass wall slid open. "I'm going," I said to Emma. You stay here and guard him.
If Miss Peregrine's in there, I'm coming too.
It was clear there was no talking her out of it. Then we're bringing him with us, I said. Warren tried to dart away, but Emma caught him by the back of his coat. I ran through the door into the dark and jumbled room, and Emma was behind me with the squirming, mouthless intern collared in one hand. I heard the glass door bang shut behind us. Emma swore. I turned to look. On the other side of the door, on the floor, lay the remote. We were locked in. We'd only been inside the room a few seconds when the intern managed to wriggle from Emma's grasp and tumble off into the darkness. Emma started to chase him, but I held her back. He didn't matter. What mattered was the hollow, which was nearly out of its hole now and into the room. It was starving. I could feel its gnawing hunger as if it were my own. In moments it would start feasting on Imbrans unless we could stop it, unless I could stop it. First, though, I would have to find it, and the room was so crowded with junk and shadows that my ability to see hollows wasn't of a great advantage. I asked Emma for more light. She strengthened the flames in her hands as much as she could, but it seemed to only lengthen the shadows. To keep her safe, I asked her to stay by the door. She refused.
We stick together, she said.
Stick together behind me, then. Way behind me. That, at least, she granted me. As I moved past catatonic Miss Glassbill and deeper into the room, Emma hung back several paces, holding one hand high above her head to light our way. What we could see of the room looked like a bloodless battlefield hospital. Deconstructed human forms scattered everywhere. My foot kicked an arm. It rang dully and spun away, plaster. Here was a torso on the table. There a head in a liquid-filled jar, its eyes and mouth agape, almost certainly real, but not of recent vintage. This seemed to be Call's lab, torture chamber, and storage closet all in one. He was a hoarder, like his brother, of strange and ghastly things, only where Bentham was organized to a T, Call badly needed a maid. "Welcome to the Hollow's play space," Call said, his amplified voice echoing through the room. "We conduct experiments on them here, feed them, watch them disassemble their food. I wonder what part of you they'll eat first. Some hollows start with the eyes. A little amuse-bouche." I tripped over a body which yelped as my foot dug into it. Looking down, I saw the scared-to-death face of a middle-aged woman peeping back at me, wild-eyed. An Imbran I didn't know. Without stopping, I bent down and whispered, "Don't worry, we'll get you out of here." But no, I thought, we would not. This chaos of forms and mad shadows would be the scene of our death. Old Jacob ascending, doom saying, "Unshut-upable." I heard something shift, deeper in the room, followed by the wet draw of a hollow-gas mouth opening. It was here among us. I aimed myself toward it and ran, tripping, catching myself. Emma running too, saying, "Jacob, hurry!" Call over the PA mocking us. "Jacob, hurry!" He had turned up the music, driving, upbeat, deranged. We passed 3-4 more Imbrans, all tied and struggling, before I finally saw it. I stopped, breathless, my mind reeling at its sheer size. The hollow was a giant, several heads taller than the one I'd tamed, its skull nearly scraping the ceiling despite its hunched frame. It was 20 feet away, its jaws wide and tongues raking the air. Emma stumbled a few feet ahead of me and stuck out her hand, pointing at something and lighting it at the same time.
There, look!
It wasn't the hollow she'd seen, of course, but what it was moving toward. A woman, upside down and twisting, hung up like a side of beef, her black skirts blooming about her head. Even like that, even in the dark, I knew her. It was Miss Wren. Addison was hanging right next to her. They were struggling, gagged, a mere feet from a hologhast whose tongues were now stretching toward them, slipping around Miss Wren's shoulders, drawing her into its jaws. "Stop!" I screamed, first in English, then in a rasping language the hollow could understand. I shouted again, then again, until it did stop, though not because it was under my control, but because I had suddenly become much more interesting prey. It released the Imbrin, and she swung away like a pendulum. The hollow turned its tongues toward me. "Cut down Miss Wren while I draw the hollow away," I said. I moved away from Miss Wren while talking to the hollow in a constant stream, hoping to draw it away from her and keep its attention on me. "Close your mouth. Sit down. Lie down." It turned away from Miss Wren as I moved. Good. Good. And then as I backed away, it came forward. "Yes. Okay. Now what?" My hands went to my pockets. In one I had what remained of Mother Dust's finger. In the other, a secret. A vial of Ambro I'd swiped from the previous room while Emma wasn't looking. I'd taken it during a momentary lapse of confidence. What if I couldn't do this on my own? What if I needed a boost? "Sit down," I said. "Stop." The hollow whipped one of its tongues at me. I ducked behind a mannequin, and the tongue lassoed that instead, lifting it up and flung it against a wall where it shattered. I dove away from a second tongue, banged my shins on a tipped-over chair. The tongue slapped the empty floor where I'd just been. The hollow was toying with me now, but soon it would go in for the kill. I had to do something, and there were two somethings I could do: the vial or the finger. There was no way I'd be able to control this hollow without the boost in my abilities a vial of Ambro could give. Mother Dust's crushed finger, on the other hand, wasn't something I could launch away from me, and I'd lost my mask. If I tried to use it, I'd only put myself to sleep. It was worse than useless. As another tongue smashed into the ground beside me, I slid beneath a table and pulled the vial from my pocket. I fumbled to uncork it, my hand shaking. Would it make a hero of me or a slave? Could one vial really addict me for life? And what would be the worst outcome? Being an addict and a slave, or being dead in this hollow stomach? The table was ripped away, leaving me exposed. I leapt to my feet. "Stop! Stop!" I shouted, taking small hops backward as the hollow's tongues lashed at me, missing by mere inches. My back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. I took a blow to the stomach, and then the tongue that had hit me uncurled and moved to wrap around my neck. I needed to run, but I was stunned, doubled over, breath knocked out of me. Then I heard an angry snarl, one that hadn't come from the hollow, and a stout, echoing bark. Addison! Suddenly the tongue that was reaching for my neck stiffened as if in pain, and retracted across the room. The dog, that brave little boxer, had bitten it. I heard him growling and yelping as he began to do battle with an invisible creature 20 times his size. I slid to the floor, back against the wall, breath filling my lungs again. I held up the vial, determined now, convinced I had no choice without it. I pulled the cork, raised the bottle above my eyes, and tilted back my head. And then I heard my name. Jacob! Softly spoken in the dark, a few feet away. I turned to look, and there on the floor, lying amidst a pile of parts, was Miss Peregrine, bruised, tied, struggling to speak through a haze of pain or drugs, but there, nonetheless, and gazing at me with those piercing green eyes. Don't, she said softly. Don't do that. Her voice barely audible, barely there. Miss Peregrine! I lowered the vial, corked it, scrambled on my hands to where she lay, this second mother of mine, this peculiar saint, fallen, hurt, dying, perhaps. Tell me you're okay, I said. Put that down, she said. You don't need it. Yes, I do. I'm not like he was. We both knew who I meant. My grandfather. Yes, you are, she said. Everything you need is inside you already. Put it down and take that instead. She nodded at something lying between us, a jagged stake of wood from a broken chair. I can't. It's not enough. It is, she assured me. Just aim for the eyes. I can't, I said, but I did. I put down the vial and took the stake. Good lad, she whispered. Now go and do something gruesome with it. I will, I said, and she smiled, her head sinking back to the floor. I stood up, determined now, the wooden stake gripped in my hand. Across the room, Addison had his teeth clamped deep into one of the hollow's tongues and was riding it like a rodeo cowboy, clinging valiantly and snarling as the hollow whipped him back and forth. Emma had cut down Miss Wren from the rope where she'd been hanging and was standing guard over her, swinging her flaming hands blindly. The hollow smacked Addison into a pole, and the dog was flung loose. I started toward the hollow, running as fast as I could through an obstacle course of scattered limbs, but like a moth to flame, the creature seemed more interested in Emma. It was starting to close in on her, and so I shouted at it, first in English, "Hey, over here!" and then in hollow, "Come and get me, you bastard!" I picked up the closest thing at hand, which happened to be a hand, and threw it. It bounced off the hollow's back, and the thing turned around to face me. "Come and get me! Come and get me!" For a moment the hollow was confused, which was just enough time for me to get close to it without getting caught up in its tongues. I stabbed it with the stake, once, twice in the chest. It reacted as if it had been stung by a bee, no worse than that, and then knocked me to the ground with a tongue. "Stop, stop, stop!" I shouted in hollow, desperate for something to get through, but the beast seemed bulletproof, totally inoculated against my suggestions. And then I remembered the finger the little chalk stub of dust in my pocket. As I reached for it, a tongue wrapped around me and hoisted me into the air. I could hear Emma shouting at it to put me down and call too. "Don't you eat him!" he screeched over the PA. "He's mine!" As I drew Mother Dust's finger from my pocket, the hollow dropped me into its open jaws. I was trapped in its mouth, from knees to chest, its teeth pinning me in place, starting to cut into my flesh, its jaws quickly expanding to swallow me. This would be my last act, my last moment. I crushed the finger in my hand and shoved it down what I hoped was the hollow's throat. Emma was beating it, burning it, and then, just before it could close its jaws and saw me in half in with its teeth, the creature began to choke. It stumbled away from Emma, burned and gagging, retreating toward the grate in the floor from which it had crawled, bounding back to its nest where it would have all the time it wanted to devour me. I tried to stop it, to shout, "Let me go!" but it was biting down, and the pain was so blacking that I couldn't think. And then we were there, at the grate, slipping down into it, its mouth so full of me that it couldn't catch hold of the rungs on the wall, and it was falling and choking, and I was still, somehow, alive. When we hit bottom, it was with a great bone-breaking crack that flattened our lungs and sent all the sedative dust I'd shoved down the hollow's gullet blowing into the air around us. As if snowed down, I could feel it working, numbing my pain and dulling my brain, and it must have been doing the same to the hollow, because it was hardly biting me at all now, its jaws slackening. As we lay in a stunned and tranquilized pile, racing towards sleep, I could see forming before me, through all those billowing white particles, a dank and lightless tunnel heaped with bones. The last thing I saw before the dust took me was a throng of hollows, hunched and curious, shuffling forward. And that is the end of chapter 7. So, I realize that's an inconvenient place to stop. But it's not my fault. I didn't make these chapters the way that Ransom Riggs did, which is unfortunate that he's in charge of making his own chapter breaks. If anyone wished more than I that I could sit here and read 80 pages in 2 hours out loud, it would be me. I'd be thrilled if I could read that fast, and it would still be comprehensible to you. But I can't. I saw that in the Discord. I was going to say happy birthday, but I was already busy reading. Happy birthday, Insomniac. Dude should not be allowed to make his own chapter breaks. It really nah. It's okay, we just blacked out with him. Pause time. It really does, because the next chapter is also about 40 pages long. So it's like, I know I can get through this chapter because there's a decent amount of pages. There's like a decent amount of pictures. I knew I could get through it. But I was also like, there definitely aren't enough pictures for me to be able to start the next chapter and have enough time. At 9:30? No. We got... Oh, yeah, for sure. What is the barking? Why is there barking? Dog's barking. Unsure why. Yeah, hi, Scout. It's not you. Yeah, I was like, Dad's not here yet. Dad doesn't get here until like right when I'm closing this live down, with startling accuracy. So no, I know it's not Dad. We still have like 25 minutes. It's just weird. Maybe Jasmine? I don't know. Jasmine and Jeff keep coming over. Sometimes randomly. No, he does not. He doesn't. No, he's just really good at timing it. Because I know, we know exactly where each other lives, and we know the exact amount of time it takes to get from his house to mine. So it's just with startling accuracy, timed pretty much right at 10. Maybe Scout's also upset about the chapter breaks. I don't think that would be why, because Scout doesn't care. Scout has 2 brain cells. He's not paying attention to this show. Which, fair. I respect it. He's got better things to do. He's got shit he'd be doing. He's a very busy animal. He needs to go pick up all his bone fragments off his bed. They're starting to bleed over out onto the hardwood, and that's not fun. If I step on another shard of that shit, I'm gonna be real mad. And Pond also needs to not lay on the top of the snake terrarium. If the animals would just get it together. I just need a little bit of compromise from the both of them. 1, not step on bone shards. 2, don't wreck my terrarium. My new terrarium. Just don't do it. She's too heavy to sit on the top screen of that terrarium. It's really unfortunate. She doesn't want snake cuddles. You know what she wants? She wants to lay on the heat lamp. I know I've had an electric blanket before, and she is not interested. And so I'm like, if I get her an electric blanket specifically for her, maybe. Am I bougie enough to do that for my cat? You know I am. So yeah, I would. But I feel like I'm going to get it, and it's not going to matter. Because she's going to like the heat lamp better. Meanwhile, you take the snake out, and the snake just wants to slide right into lit candles. That's the snake's game. That's what's warmest for the snake. She loved those little... I want you to know that I know you sent me these little hot plates for my tea and my coffee that I sit my liquids on all the time. And I do use them for that. But I want you to know they're also for Maggie. Because Maggie likes to lay on the heat plate. On the hot plate. She's like, this is warm. This is the warmest spot. I'm going to get inside this candle. And I'm like, no. That's literally on fire. That's too hot. That's too hot. You can't get that hot. So she'll like sort of circle the candle at the base. I have a candle on one of the hot plates in there that just, I keep it on there. And she'll just curl around the candle on the hot plate. And I'm like, no. No. Oh, man. So, cat facts. How... Because it's warm. And I'm like, there's no reason you should not be warm. It is 85 degrees out right now. You can go outside and be warm. I'll put you outside. And I do. Sometimes. Okay, but the thing is that it's 85 degrees outside. It can't be too hot. Especially when the snake terrarium is a comparable temperature to that. It's a comparable temperature. Maybe it's the humidity that she wants. Because it's really humid in there. Because I spray it down. And there's water in there. It's supposed to be humid. It's for snake. Okay, I thought you were talking about the cat. I was like, okay, because the cat should not be. The cat should be fine. But the thing is like, it's clearly not too hot. She'll get in the candle wax. And on the hot plate. She'll just chill there. Then again, if I had to choose... if I can make the hot plate safer somehow, and she would hang out on the on like the candle or whatever, and I could somehow make that safe magically, versus me being the centralized heat source, because that's the thing, is when you take a snake out, they're going to allocate to the nearest heat source, and they're going to be the most interested in whatever is giving off the most heat. And if that thing is you, there's just no boundaries. No physical boundaries at all. So she'll just like wriggle into my shirt and go all up. It's like... You know, I feel like just Voldemort walking around with Nagini just hanging off of him in random intervals, because that's how Nagini always shows up. He just travels down a pant leg, and that's what it feels like the snake is doing. Hiding scarves, going through shit, hiding the blankets. And I am a very comfortable person. I'm normally in trash bag clothes, large hoodies, and they're all warm. And so, like, it's not my hoodie, it's our hoodie now. Because she'll just go straight into it. And, like, carve out a little place to hang out, and then just sort of anchor there. Sometimes choking me. Sometimes, the other day I was trying to, like, move so I could get water, and she was just hanging out in the sleeve of the hoodie, pressed up against my arm, so then when I'm trying to, like, get my arm up so I can go retrieve my beverage, just freaked out and then shoved her whole head in my armpit. And that was not, it was not the plan, and I don't like stuff in my armpit. Oh yeah, extremely clingy. They're gonna. The other day she was hanging off my neck and then just pressed the tip of her tail, just like curled into my, and I was like legitimately almost like, I was like, is she actually trying to kill me? And like, I know she's measured me before, but she knows I'm too big. So she's not, this isn't intentional, right? I'm too big. She can't swallow me whole. This isn't going to work out. She still does sometimes measure the cat. Like that's going to be, like that's going to work out someday. It's not. It's not going to work out for her. Does she know that? No. She has to relearn every time. Because the cat is just a specific amount of size, or it's like, if you get a frat boy drunk enough, they're like, oh yeah, no, I can totally drive. That is Maggie's attitude towards the cat. It's like, no, I bet I could. I could do it. No, I'm good. I can make it. Like, no, you can't. No, you can't. So she'll curl around the cat. And Pond has no idea, but is also completely unconcerned. So the cat will not care. Like, I used to get worried, but then the cat is just so laissez-faire about it that I'm like, she can't be hurting her. Because Pond would react if she was being hurt. But the cat, she'll just circle the cat, and then Pond will just sort of like... and like lay back down, like supremely unconcerned, just like, what's going on here? Like, that is the level of concern that Pond is bringing to the table at any given time. And the snake is always much more startled of Pond than Pond is of the snake. Pond just won't react, but Maggie accidentally like booped both their snoots together the other day, and then she recoiled. It was her decision. Pond did not chase this at all. Oh, I do have a picture of Dave with the cat on top of him with the snake on top of the cat. So it's just sort of like stacks on stacks on stacks. If you wanted a picture of that. I did not put it in Discord. I only sent it to Dad. Alright, who's into cat facts? We gotta do cat facts before people go. Because we got a lot of breeds to cover. And today we're doing the American Curl. The American Curl Cat has distinctive round ears that curl backward. The breed can be traced back to a litter of kittens from one specific cat due to a genetic mutation that was then bred into future litters. Besides their distinctive ears, American Curl Cats are pretty average cats, with medium size and body type that are neither slender nor stocky. They can be many colors and have long or short coats, but show cats must have silky fur that lays relatively flat rather than fluffy or dense fur. When American Curl kittens are born, their ears look straight and traditional. The curl happens quickly and is related to how the cartilage of the ears develops, so that the final shape of the ear is stable and healthy for the cat. Kittens have fully curled ears in less than 6 months. Show cats almost always have a smooth, continuous curve to their ears with a clearly defined angle depending on the organization. Other American Curl cats may have slighter curl or a complete curl to the back of the head. Like Goldilocks, a successful show American Curl must be medium and just right. The breed is known to be smart and active with graceful bodies. There's a little picture. Little ears curl back. Look at this baby. Okay. This is a whole unit. Look at that cat. I'm looking through the pictures. Sorry. Also, Pawn's turning a little red in pictures now. So, looking very distinguished in her old age. Not completely red, just like when you take pictures of her, you can see it. You don't see her really unless it's in sunlight, but if you do take a picture, you'll see it on like the tips of her fur. It's just very dignified. A sweet old lady she has become. Only not so sweet. Mainly just old lady. She needs to stop playing on the terrarium. I've caught her 3 times on top of the terrarium today. And this is a new terrarium, and I'm very upset about it. I now have a terrarium in a setup where I can easily access at night so that I can get the snake out, and it doesn't warp. It's not a bad environment. I can keep up the humidity. She's healthy. It's an appropriate size. And the cat won't stop laying on the screen. And I'm afraid to death she's going to ruin it. I'm telling you, no she doesn't. She gets snake cuddles. Trust me. She gets snake cuddles. It makes me nervous, but they do interact. Do I get nervous about it? Yes. I'm constantly waiting for the day that, like, Pawn, like, just, like, you know? Because then, my cat is normally not very aggressive. And neither is the snake. The snake and cat separately. The dog's just scared. It's misleading to look at the relationship between the dog and the cat, because the dog is a fucking coward. The cat just has to look at him the wrong way for him to, like, completely vacate his bed and be like, "Here, your majesty, please, sleep here." No, I wasn't sleep. This isn't my bed. I found it here for you. Like, he'll do that every single time. But Maggie just sort of doesn't have a reference for the cat, and neither does the cat have a reference for the snake. They've seen each other through the glass, and but when they actually started interacting, and they've interacted before, it's just been a while, because the primary time when I can, that when Maggie would get outside time is when I'm here. I'm here at night. Dave is asleep at night. The terrarium is in the bedroom at night. And I can't just go in there clanking my way away trying to get into a fucking snake cage in the middle of the night with all the lights off when I can't see to reach into a snake cage to get my snake out for exercise. So she just hasn't had a whole lot of exercise. And it's been limited to once a week, if that, and that's not healthy. So I relocated. I got a new terrarium that would fit in here, that insulates better, that holds humidity better. And so the snake and the cat haven't directly interacted in a long time. And I was a little bit nervous of that fact. But my snake has a generally good temperament. She doesn't get easily anxious. She doesn't get easily frightened. She doesn't get easily aggressive. But she will if you get in her face. And so, she booped her in the nose the other day, and it was entirely Maggie's fault. But for one hot second, I was like, the snake's gonna bite my cat in the face. And I was gonna lose it. That did not happen. It did not happen. But I was afraid it would. And I'm consistently afraid that it would. And Dave has a great time. Dave tries to get them to interact. He's like, I'm going to put the snake on the cat, and then the cat on the dog. And I'm like, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're giving me anxiety. He did put the snake on the cat the other day, and the cat could care less. The cat just wanted to be pet. And did not particularly care by which species. So it all worked out. But I do have a picture, and I'll put that in the Discord later. Speaking of Discord, I do have to set up everything in there again. Because, like I said, I just recently got back in town, and when I left town, I took my Switch with me. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know where the power cable is now. So I should probably find that before the live on Discord starts. And I think it's in the bag. I just left it in the bag, but I'm not sure because I thought I got all the cables out of the bag. In which case, it might be in the bag that I hang on the back of the door with all the electronic stuff. But I feel like I wouldn't have done that with the power cable to the Switch because it's so distinctive. I would have pulled it out and been like, this is for the Switch. This goes in the living room. And not just put it right back in the bag. But maybe I did do that. I don't know. It's in one of 3 places. I can tell you that much. I don't remember where specifically I put it. Or why. But I just know it's not in the living room connected to the Switch. So we're going to fix that. I'm going to get some more coffee. And I will be back in the Discord in less than 10 minutes or so. And we're going to play Death's Door. I don't have a cue for it, is the thing. I don't have one for it. All of the outlets that I use for are USB-C completely. Like Samsung cables, or they are... I don't have a block for them. Like the one in my bedroom that I plug my phone into every single night, it is just a straight USB-C USB power strip that I plug it into. Like the outlet is a USB out, and the other one is a USB-C out that plugs into the phone. But it doesn't have a block, and I don't know where the block is. Thank you for all the cat paws. And then my actual Samsung charger has a USB-C outlet at both ends. And the block only has USB-C openings. So I don't know if that will work. It's worth a shot if I can't find it. But I feel like I'll find it. It's only in one of 3 places. I definitely didn't leave it at my mother's. I didn't. I didn't. That was the worst case scenario that just occurred to me, but I don't think it's that. I think I'm overthinking things. But anyway, thank you for everybody who joined. We do this every week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central, and I read you a story, and then we play video games well into the early hours of the morning, which is what we're going to go do now. If you want to join us next time, I will have this live, and all the previous ones are on my YouTube, so you can catch up on the plot of the book if you want to do that, and I will see you all